Montana This Morning continues on Montana's News Leader.
In a surprise announcement, President Trump agrees to meet face-to-face with North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. I'm Hannah Doba with all the details.
Is Montana being affected by Trump administration environmental law changes? Coming up, state regulators, industry, and environmental groups talk about what's happening here in the Treasure State.
6:30 on your Friday morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And our top story for you now, in a stunning turn of events, President Trump has agreed to sit down for talks with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, if the meeting does take place, it would be the first ever face-to-face negotiation between sitting leaders of North Korea and the United States. CBS's Hannah Doba has more on how that meeting came to be.
It was South Korea that brought the news and invitation from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to the White House.
He expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible.
President Trump accepted. The offer was extended as a South Korean delegation briefed U.S. officials about its recent sit-down with Pyongyang.
In our meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said he is committed to denuclearization. Kim pledged that North Korea will refrain from any further nuclear or missile tests.
South Korea says the face-to-face will take place before the end of May. The White House, though, insists a time and place have yet to be determined. President Trump tweeted in part, "Great progress being made, but sanctions will remain until an agreement is reached. Meeting being planned." The talks and North Korean promises, though, are being taken with a grain of salt, both within the Trump administration and by Asian policy analysts.
If what we're seeing right now is a shock level of 8 out of 10, I mean, North Korea actually giving up its nukes would be off the charts.
A senior administration official said any deal with North Korea would have to come with some form of verification of denuclearization. Hannah Doba, CBS News.
Now, if you remember, in December, Kim Jong-un said his nation's nuclear deterrent was, quote, irreversible. Now, neither government officials nor analysts are clear on what exactly caused Pyongyang's sudden change of course. More to follow, certainly, on that.
Absolutely. Excited to see what happens there. Yeah.
For sure. Exciting to see what's going to happen in our weather. Beautiful morning out
Gorgeous.
there, Matt. Gorgeous. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
We've blamed you for all week. Now it's nice to give you a little praise.
You're welcome.
There you go.
Yeah. It kind of depends on where we're at. That's right. Kind of the double-edged sword here. There is some snow out in the area along I-15 between Butte and Helena. We're dealing with that. Snow on the roadways. Temperatures actually very mild early on. 41 degrees in Belgrade right now, 28 in Butte. Could be a little slick for a few areas west of the divide this morning as we see some snow showing up. Beautiful shot there off of our iCam at the Bozeman Yellowstone International Airport. Very mild, 41. I think that we should stay into the 40s today with a few scattered showers. Here's our mining city iCam. Very quiet right now. The wind's expected to pick up and we'll probably see some showers before it's all said and done. We'll talk more in depth about that in a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. Now 6:33 on this Friday morning. Top local story. Police in Livingston investigating an attempted child abduction. It happened Tuesday evening just before 6 o'clock. Child's mother says an unknown man grabbed a hold of her child and began to pull him away from the sidewalk. Man described as a white male with darker complexion in his mid-30s. Suspect was wearing a dark hoodie with light-colored sweatpants. He may have some type of flame tattoo on his left wrist. The vehicle he was in is described as a black Nissan car. Now, the Livingston Police Department has increased its presence in school zones and other areas where children may be present. Anyone with information on the suspect should call Livingston Police Department. That number on your screen, 222-2050.
And Bozeman is putting money towards revising the current city flood map. Reporter Meredith Babb tells us the impact these changes could have on local businesses.
Buildings near the Bozeman Creek could face new restrictions and regulations depending on their location downtown. For the past 5 years, the Federal Emergency Management Agency has been working on this map. Areas around the creek will either be labeled as primary or secondary. Primary zones are where the water would be the deepest during a flood. The secondary zones, water would not have as much of an impact, but would still be severe. Executive Director of the Downtown Partnership, Chris Nauman, says it's important that his company works with FEMA on the map to make sure it's accurate.
Depending on whether a building or a property is in the primary floodway or the secondary floodway, it will mean there's increased regulations and requirements on those properties.
Nauman says property owners could have to obtain flood insurance, stop development, or require them to make updates to their buildings.
We suspect that if there's an increased burden of flood insurance on some of these properties, that will increase leases.
Nauman says already several businesses have reached out to him voicing their concern about the update of this new map. Madaris Bab, MTN, Bozeman.
Now, it could take FEMA and the city of Bozeman more than a year to finalize changes in this flood map plan.
In other headlines, the Department of Environmental Quality says it needs more time to produce the draft environmental impact statement for the proposed copper mine in central Montana. Sandfire Resources of America, the company previously known as Tintina Resources, is proposing the Black Butte copper project near White Sulphur Springs. Now, the DEQ is required by Montana law to have completed an environmental impact statement issued after 1 year of the original mine operating permit. But that's standard. The DEQ should have finished the EIS by September 18th of this year. But DEQ's Public Policy Director Christy Panozzo says currently just the draft EIS would be ready by that time. President and CEO for the project, John Shanahan, says the extension request, not surprising.
We knew 12 months was going to be a difficult timeline to meet, but in all fairness to the DEQ, the agency has really gone about its work, very diligently. No shortcuts here. They need to do a thorough and robust assessment, which I believe they are doing. We can't force the pace because it is what it is. It has to be done correctly.
Now, the DEQ is also reviewing the air quality permit application along with 2 changes to the metal mine permit application. Those changes can be found by visiting our websites.
President Trump and his supporters claim that his move to roll back regulations on businesses is clearing the way for more development, more investment, and more jobs. But in the second part installment of a 2-part series, MTN's Mike Dennison reports that some people believe the president's policies are doing more harm than good.
While coal, oil, and gas interests cheer Trump's moves to shed regulations on their industries, clean power and environmental advocates are not.
It really puts America, it takes us from the driver's seat and puts us in the back seat on these technologies that the rest of the world is moving forward with and are reaping the benefits of the jobs and reductions in utility bills.
Speaking to an oil and gas group this week, former Montana Congressman and U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke said the Trump administration is pro-energy across the board. But Fady and others note that the Trump administration has proposed deep cuts in federal spending on renewable power research, energy efficiency, and clean water oversight. Ann Hedges is deputy director for one of Montana's leading conservation groups, the Montana Environmental Information Center. She says the rush to roll back regulations on coal and other dirty fuels won't save those industries, which are being undercut by cheaper, cleaner power sources.
They're doing it in a way that gives the people in places like Colstrip a hope that the elimination of these regulations is going to save their jobs, it's going to protect their industry. And that's simply not true.
But she says it will lead to dirtier air and water, threaten public health and jobs in the outdoor industries, and stymie jobs in power sectors like solar and wind.
They can say that those are creating jobs, but I would argue it's actually the opposite.
Yet Montana's top environmental regulator says it's too early to know the real impact of the Trump regulatory rollback here in the Treasure State. State Department of Environmental Quality Director Tom Livers says some Trump rule changes are still being finalized and that others don't change much what the state already does on regulation. Yet Livers says he is concerned about proposed cuts in regulators' budgets and whether the first set of changes is just the beginning.
I think the big concern, Mike, would be as if what we're seeing is just the first wave, which it could be. I think we have to be watching what are the cumulative effects of all this stuff put together. It could be significant.
Some of these rule changes also face court challenges across the country. So, what's the real impact so far? On that question, the verdict is still a ways out. Mike Dennison, MTN News, Helena.
Now, since taking office last year, the Trump administration has repealed, it's reevaluating more than 60 environmental laws.
More to follow.
Absolutely more to follow on that. Nice job with Mike Dennison on that package as well. Happy Friday to you and top of the morning to you as well. So happy to have you here. When we return, Chet sits down with sleep specialist Dr. James Osmonsky. How to survive the switch up of daylight saving. Some pro tips ahead.
Absolutely. But first, we're going to head to New York, check in with Nora O'Donnell for a look at what's coming up at 7 on CBS This Morning.
Good morning. Ahead here on CBS This Morning, we're going to look at the risks and potential rewards of a face-to-face meeting between President Trump and the man he calls Little Rocket Man, North Korea's dictator Kim Jong-un. And a big cultural shift for women. We're going to take a closer look at what's driving the trend to ditch high heels. See you right at 7.